Hi guys, this is Ivan from Skills Build Training. This channel is about showing you how to become a highly paid IT pro fast. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to set up the Elastic Stack and send system logs that will provide important security information and visualizations. Thank you for choosing to watch this video. To help us help more people like you, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, hit the notification bell so you'll get notified of our future videos. So let's get started. If you've ever wondered how security analysts know when an intruder has attacked, or how security operations make stunning maps and graphs from security logs, then you'll want to watch. I'll explain how you can install the Elastic Stack on a Linux server and configure it to receive logs from both Windows and Linux endpoints using beats. Once we have all that set up, then I'll teach you how to use the Elastic tool known as Cabana to visualize this data. So what is the Elastic Stack? Simply put, it's a group of services that each has a part to play in the collection, storage, and analyzation of data. At the ingestion level, you could use centralized servers such as Logstash, or lightweight beat agents such as FileBeat or PacketBeat. In the middle of it all, you have the meat and potatoes Elasticsearch, which is a NoSQL database, but it does much more than just store data. It also provides advanced analytics, machine learning jobs, you can do alerts, and all sorts of expanding tools. Cabana now acts as the visual interface where you'll manage Elasticsearch, you'll create your alerts, you'll create graphs, you'll create that user experience that has really made Elastic the dominant force in the industry. Let's go over the requirements for the project. I will be using a virtual machine that I've made on VirtualBox. You can use whatever virtualization program you choose, however. It will run Ubuntu Linux, although any Debian flavored Linux distribution will also use the same commands that I will be using. For RAM, I would suggest 4 to 8 gigabytes. I will be using 8 myself. A minimum of 40 gigabyte hard drive, and please make sure to bridge the network interface since we will be sending live logs from the host machine. Speaking of the host machine, it'll be running Windows 10, any version's fine. RAM again, 8 to 16 gigabytes depending on the size of your VM. And I just put a general hard drive 500 to 1 terabyte recommendation there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start working. So the first step will be to install Elasticsearch on our VirtualBox virtual machine. So the place that I'm going to go for the instructions here, and I suggest you visit this site often when working with Elastic, I know I do, is the official Elastic documentation. It's very detailed, very step-by-step instructions. So you can see they got this whole section on the right here that shows you how to do just about anything you can think of with the Elastic Stack. So we're going to come down here and choose the Debian package since I'm using Ubuntu, which is Debian based. First thing we have to do is make sure to install their public signing key so that our server knows the package is safe. So I'm going to come here. Now I'm using VirtualBox again with Ubuntu, and I have the guest editions added so that I can copy paste between host and guest. In case you've never done this before, you actually just come up into here into devices. You'll insert this CD image, let it install. Then you can start using these tools like the shared clipboard, which I have set on bidirectional. Just in case some of you might be wondering how I'm copying and pasting. Whoops, closed my terminal. Let's open that again. Using Control-Alt-T, by the way, as the shortcut to bring up the terminal. So I paste that instruction. Enter password. Help if I entered it correctly. And now we got that. So that was the sign-in key, so it knows what we're doing here. Now the next thing we're going to do is make sure we have this package for our package manager, this HTTPS transport. Okay, next thing we're going to do is go ahead and add their repository to our repository packages. So here what's happening is it's telling it to go ahead, download this package, this Debian package, which is the 7.x Elastic, and then add it to this configuration file in the app configuration. Go ahead and put in that command, and it's done it. Now all we have to do is do a apt update, which is going to update the packages that are included on our machine. So you can see right away it's added the Elastic packages now. So now we can just install any piece of Elastic software that we wish, which is why this is one of the preferred methods. So we're going to do apt install Elasticsearch, and we're going to go ahead and use -y so it doesn't prompt us if we want to do it, because, well, we know we're doing it. And you'll see now that Elasticsearch is being downloaded and installed. So I'll go ahead and let this download and install. It'll take different amounts of time depending on your internet connection. Elasticsearch has finished installing. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that it's working using its default conditions. So we're going to give a command, sudo service Elasticsearch start. Now, depending on the resources of your virtual machine and your host machine, it'll take varying amounts of time for the server to boot up. It's a very resource-heavy server, but it does a fantastic job. Okay. Now we can make sure it's running in two different ways. We can do sudo service Elasticsearch status. And this is going to show a lot of things, actually. It's going to show that it's actively running here. So it's actively running. It tells us the main process ID, which is 7140. If you're into security, you're definitely going to want to learn about process IDs and how they tell you what started and who started it. And you can see that this was a Java process. And then you can see the first couple lines of the log being put out. So we're going to go ahead and show you a second way, and that is we can actually use curl to the loopback address of the server, so 127.0.0.1, which is your internal address, and then port 9200. And this will get a HTTP GET request sent to the Elastic Stack, and it will let you know everything about it. By the way, if curl isn't installed on your Linux distribution, just install it and then use it. I had to do that the first time as well. This will tell you a lot of things. Tell you the name of the machine that it's on, which in my case, I call this virtual machine the factory. Elasticsearch is the default cluster name. And then it also tells you the version number here of Elasticsearch itself, which is in our case 7.6.2. If you do happen to be using a later version of Elastic or an earlier version of Elastic, these same install rules should still apply since we're just using the package that's provided by Elastic. And no matter what time period you happen to be working on this, they'll provide a brand new package for you to use. Now, we have Elasticsearch working, but for our purposes, this isn't configured properly. Right now, it's just running on that loopback, 127.0.0.1. We want to be able to send logs from the outside, which means we need to make it so that, you know, our laptop, for instance, or whatever host you're using can send WinLogBeat logs. So what we're going to do is change the configuration slightly. The first step is to stop the server, because each time you make a change to the configuration, you have to restart the server. So we're going to do sudo service Elasticsearch stop, and that will stop the server. So now that Elasticsearch is ready to go, we're going to go ahead and make those configuration changes that will make it so we can send logs to it from the outside world. So what we're going to do is use a text editor called nano. So go ahead and give the command sudo nano, and then the location of the configuration file. Now, for those of you not as familiar with Linux, the /etc directory is where just about all the system configuration files are kept, which is nice and convenient. So etc/elasticsearch/elasticsearch.yml. So as you can see, this is the configuration file. You could do things like set up your node names here. Usually Elastic runs as a cluster of multiple nodes, so each one would have to have a unique name. You have the paths for the data and log files. You have your memory settings. We're going to come down here into the network settings. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this cluster to be single node discovery. And we're going to set it to the IP of the virtual machine. Now, in case you can't remember what the IP was or you didn't check, I'll go ahead and go through that. I'm going to open up a new terminal. And then if you're using Ubuntu like I am, you're going to use IP ADDR. And that'll list your interfaces. And you can then come down here, go to the one that's bridged. In my case, it's EPOZ17. And you can see that the IP address here is at the .1.13. So I got that now. Now, if you're using an older version of Ubuntu or perhaps a more Debian-like system, you might use the older command, which is ifconfig. Just showing you that because on older systems, those tools were loaded. On Ubuntu 18 and forward, they're no longer. You can see when I do it, it tells me it's not installed. So we'll go ahead and change this to .1.13. Now we also got to come down here into discovery. The reason for this is because, again, Elastic usually runs as multiple nodes, and one of them needs to be a master node. So what we're doing here is we're going ahead and tell it that it can elect itself as the master node. So just go ahead and put that same IP address in. And then you can close out and save your changes. That was Control X for that shortcut key, just in case you're wondering if you haven't used Nano very often. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and start our cluster up again. So sudo Elasticsearch start. Oh, silly me. Sudo service Elasticsearch start. Sorry about that. So we'll go ahead and start that up. At the same time, let's go ahead and open up a Windows command prompt. Because remember, we want to make sure that we can reach the server, our Elastic Stack, from the outside world. And this means that we'll be able to send logs, say, from this Windows host to the Elastic server. Okay, now that's ready to go. We can go ahead and make sure that we can do this. The way you do that is you do curl and then the IP of the server. So in my case, it's going to be .1.13. And don't forget the port 9200. And there you go. It successfully sent a request to the Elastic Stack and got the response. So now we know our logs will make it. So that's always a good feeling. Elasticsearch is configured and running, and we'll go ahead and leave it running from now on. We are going to install Cabana. Now, earlier we had added the Elastic package to our Ubuntu system. What this means is we don't have to do anything other than just use the apt package manager to install Cabana. So we actually get the easy route. It's going to be sudo apt install -y, so we don't deal with the prompt, Cabana. Simple as that. So Cabana will download now, and then we'll be ready to start using it as well. Okay, so Cabana is ready to be used. One other thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and install our first beat. Beats are lightweight agents that send logs and other signals and information to the Elastic stack. So the beat we're going to install actually is going to be monitoring this virtual machine. So this is how you would, say, monitor your Linux servers in the cloud or on site if you want to watch them for performance or security or whatever reason you might have. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use the command, because again, we have that package installed. We're going to go ahead and do sudo apt install Auditbeat. And we'll get the yes. And it will go ahead and install Auditbeat for us. Now that we have both Cabana and Auditbeat in place, let's go ahead and get these two ready to send their logs and be able to visualize from Elasticsearch. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some details to the configuration files. The first one will be Cabana. So sudo nano etc, because that's where configurations are kept, Cabana, and then the file is cabana.yaml. Okay. So here's the Cabana configuration. So you can see it has a standard port of 5601. We're not going to change that. We're also going to go ahead and leave the host on localhost. Since this server has a desktop on it, we can use the local web browser to access it on the loopback address. In a real environment, obviously, you would set this to whatever IP address the server was on that you wanted to access from the outside. For instance, if I wanted to set this up in my home network and I wanted it to be accessible from any device, then I would go ahead and do exactly what I had done with the Elastic Stack, and I'd give it its IP address. But for this purpose in this lab, we're not going to have to do that. What we do need to do is we need to come down here to where you find Elasticsearch host, because we did change that address. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to go http:// and then go ahead and put in the IP address of your Elastic stack, the one that you put in that configuration. For me, it's .1.13. The port is still the same at 9200. Now we're going to do the same for the configuration of Auditbeat, and I'll also show you a few things in the Auditbeat setup. So sudo nano etc Auditbeat auditbeat.yaml. You're probably getting the hang of this by now. Those locations are pretty standard no matter what program you're actually working with, which is one of the things I love about Linux, to be honest. Okay, so the first thing you're going to come across in the configuration is the module configurations. For instance, this one, active all the time by default, is going to be auditd. Auditd is a logging system that runs on Unix-like systems. And what it does is it monitors the actual kernel of the operating system. So it's at a very deep level that it's doing this logging. And then there's certain defaults. There's rule sets you could add that will enhance the logging. But we're going to go ahead and leave the defaults on for now. So you can have executions, external access, identity changes, unauthorized access attempts. All these can be set up. It's really a topic for a video that goes more in depth on this type of logging, but Elastic does provide a lot of material, and you can always look up information on topics like threat hunting and look up auditd, and they have preset whole rule sets out there for you actually that will produce some really good logs. But just the default settings that Elastic gives you in the beginning actually do a lot. Because let's go ahead and look at what it does. It does look at the file integrity of these major system paths, including those pesky configurations. So some attacker can't get in there and start changing things up without you knowing about it. The module system, it looks over the data sets for hosts, logins, packages installed, processes, sockets, and user information. And this is right out of the box. So in reality, this is actually pretty powerful just right outside of the box. There's, for someone who just wants to learn how to use it, get a feel for how the security devices work, then you can really start fine-tuning your skills. And then there's setup down here in case you had to change the Cabana host, which we didn't, and we're not using Elastic Cloud. However, we are going to come down here to the output because Auditbeat is sending it to Elasticsearch, but right now it's set to send it to localhost. So we're going to change that. Again, just that same IP address of your Elastic server. So for me, it's .1.13. Make sure that's all good. If we had security settings turned on, we would be entering either an API key or username password combination. In a real environment, a non-lab that is, you would want to have that. Elastic has made all that basic security settings free now. So even in a standard non-paid license like the one that I'm using for this, you can have full security settings now. So usernames, passwords, you name it, you can do it. Beats can also output to other outputs. For instance, Logstash is on here. You could use a Kafka server. You could be sending them to perhaps some other type of input. But for now, we're going to be using directly to Elasticsearch because that's really one of the most beneficial things of Beats is that they can go right into Elastic and they're very, very efficient. Okay, so those two are set up now. So let's go ahead and start them up. So we're going to do sudo nano service Cabana start. Oh, not now. Sorry. Hold on. I didn't mean to write nano. The best of us mistype sometimes. So sudo service Cabana start. So then we're also going to go ahead and do sudo. Actually, hold off on that. We have to do one thing before we can turn on Auditbeat. We need to make sure that its dashboards and Cabana are ready. We need to make sure that its default templates are ready. And luckily, again, Elastic gives you all of this out of the box. You don't have to make any of this by hand. But what you do have to do is you have to remember to set it up. So we're going to do this step. It's going to be sudo Auditbeat. Then we're going to use a -e option because I want to make sure to see it all logged on the console. And then we're going to give it the setup command. Okay, and what it's doing is it's connecting. First, it's proving that it can connect to Elasticsearch. And then finally, it's going ahead and it's actually doing all that. It's setting up the template names, the patterns, and then it's going and it's connecting to Cabana, and it's actually loading all the preloaded index patterns and dashboards. So all those pretty graphs, which is really nice that they have this so that it automatically sets it up for you like that. Okay. And that also shows that Cabana's running because it was able to connect to it. All right. So next we're going to be looking at Cabana itself. So we'll leave terminal land for now and we'll go visual. Okay, now we've opened our web browser and we're ready to go into Cabana. So the way you do that is http:// and then the loopback address, which is 127 50.0.0.1, and then the port is 5601, which is the default Cabana port. We left it the same. And then that will load up. So this is the home page for Cabana. From here you can explore all the different availabilities, different applications. Point out some of the more important tabs. You have the Discovery tab up here. This is how you go ahead and look at raw logs themselves. So you can see right now I'm looking at my Auditbeat index pattern. You can change index patterns if you had more than one. You can set the time period that you're going to look at it. So we could change this to today, in case we wanted a little broader look. Or we could look at when I was working on this earlier. We could set this to last 7 days. Maybe I wasn't working on it. 30 days. Okay, so yeah, that's as early as I was working on it. Come in here, you can actually see all these. Now, if you click on one of these fields here, like let's say the destination port, you'll see all the different ports that network traffic is going to and what percentage. So Discovery tab, very important. The next two tabs, visualizations and dashboards, we'll get in more to those in part 2 of our intro to Elastic. Just want to real fast show you the management tab down here, which I'm going to go ahead and click on. I want to show you. This is where you do your management of your Elasticsearch and your Cabana deployment. One thing in particular I want to show you is the index management. This is where you can come in here and you can actually now in 7.x you can go into the mappings and the settings. You can come in here, you can edit these. This is something you wouldn't have been able to do in previous versions. So that's pretty neat that you can do that. You can also get all of its information here. What actions are in its lifecycle management, size, document counts. So very important. Same here. Saved objects in Cabana, by the way, are anything. You have different types. You have index patterns, visualizations, searches, dashboards, maps. Any of the parts that make up Cabana, they're called saved objects, and they're saved in this JSON format. And you can see them all if you go there. So before we close out, I want to show you the SIEM application, which is the highlight of the Elasticsearch security package. If we go ahead and click on this, we'll see that in addition to being able to make our own graphs and maps and charts, we can actually just use this pre-built application as well. And this is a very powerful application to have ready for you to use right off the bat. We'll go into the host because we've been sending the host data from our Linux server, and we can see it down here. And we can click on factory, which is the host name for mine. And now you'll see its first seen, when it was last seen, its IP address, its MAC address, what platform and OS it is, its architecture. All this information is right there. You can see what events have been going on. So we have all these different events going on, NetFlow events. And you can break any of those down in this timeline tab. If you were to drag something over and drop it, then you'd be able to see that event and other relating events all here. So as you can see, you can really get your security investigation skills going up just with this basic install, with this basic setup we did just now. So in the next part of Elastic's introduction, we're going to learn more about making graphs in Cabana. We're going to learn how to set up WinLogBeat on a Windows host so that we can send Windows security logs to Cabana. We're going to see what they look like in the SIEM application, as well as I'm going to show you the just basics of how to make your own graphs and such, so you get a feeling for what it's going to be like. So remember to comment any questions you have. Feel free to write them. I'll get right back to you. Make sure to click like and subscribe to our channel so we can keep making these videos for everybody. And I hope you enjoyed.